All right, now Brooke's here with us to break down scams, starting with the telephone scams. Now, I know for sure I have been a victim of this. I have heard people talking over the phone, and they have those creepy robocallers.
Yeah.
So if someone was to get a call from them, could you break that down on what they should do first and foremost?
So when you receive a call, the first thing is to identify what they're asking for. What are they saying? What's the purpose of this call? If it's a scam and they're trying to convince you, for example, that the IRS, you owe money, sometimes they'll pretend to be your utility company and say you're not paid up on your bills. In some way, you owe money and they're the deliverer of the bad news and they're there to tell you that we're here to collect and we're going to do it aggressively. So what I always tell people is when you get one of these calls, calm down, take a breath. Nobody's getting arrested today. Nobody's getting fined right now. Even if you do, even if it's real and you do owe money and you're like, oh, maybe I do. Calm down, take a breath, hang up the phone, find a statement from that company. So if they say, I'm with the utility company and you're not paid up on your utilities and we need to collect right now or we're going to turn off your electric. That's a good example. That happens, right? Pick up an old utility bill. Find the customer service number for your actual utility company. Call the utility company. Don't call the number that called you back. Call the utility company and say, I just got this call. Am I paid up? Do I owe anything else? And then they'll be able to pretty quickly tell you whether that was a scam or not. And that'll also kind of give you a sense of, okay, I'm fine, everything's fine. Or like I said, you can call our office. So the first step is identifying who's calling you, what they're asking for, and do you have a real customer service number for this supposed business that you can call to prove them wrong. That's the first step.
Another example that I've had is my bank calls me and says that there's a charge, a fraudulent charge, that I need to go online and fix this now. Yeah. What happens? What would I do then?
Same concept. So you obviously have an established relationship with this supposed banking institution. Hang up the phone and you simply say to this real person, robocall, whatever the case may be, you simply have the right to say, you know what, let me do a little fact checking and get back to you. Just a moment. Hang up that phone. They're going to get aggressive. They're going to want to keep you on the phone and keep it going. Say, no, thank you. I'm going to do some fact checking and I'll get right back to you. Hang up that phone. Call the actual institution and do a little research to figure out what's going on, because most likely the bank's going to say, we didn't call you. We have no records. And that tells you scam.
Okay, so maybe they want just like your account number or your PIN number. Are those things that we should be giving them or no?
No, absolutely not. You never give any identifying numbers about yourself to anyone unless you are at the institution and it's relevant. If you are at an institution and it's part of their process and their policy, you still have the right to say, I want to read your policies. I want to see why I have to give this information. You should never feel pressured to give any personal identifying information about yourself to anyone. Even if you have an established relationship with that business, that's still private information, and you, as a consumer and as a West Virginia resident, have the right to say, I'm going to hang up the phone and do a little research. Let me call the Attorney General's office and get back to you. And that usually gets them from, they usually back down a little bit.
Yeah, either that or you just downright hang up on them, which
yes.
I've done, yeah.
Hanging up is always the best practice, because there's actually some scams that just by engaging with them, even if you aren't giving really personal information, they can still scam you. So the longer you talk to them, the more you're setting yourself up to be scammed. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times people say, well, I like to mess with them and I do this. If you feel confident, go ahead. But just remember, the longer you're talking to them, the longer you're giving them information, even if it seems small to you, that they can use to steal your identity.
Yeah, and these days they're getting smart. Like they can take your phone number and
mm-hmm.
figure you out that way.
Absolutely. Sometimes technology is our worst curse in all of this.
Blessing and a curse.
Blessing and a curse, for sure.
So what about the do not call list? I mean, you said earlier that they could still call you even though you're on the do not call list. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so the do not call list, like I said, it's not perfect. Unfortunately, I have yet to discover any technology that completely wipes out all unwanted calls. And the reason for that is because there's a lot of exceptions to everything. So for the do not call list, if you have an established relationship, an institution, a bank, any kind of account, if you have an established relationship and account, they can still call you even if they're on the list. So there's one way they can get around it. Number two, any campaigns, political, if somebody wants to call you to campaign for themselves, they can usually get around it. And the other important thing to remember is that sometimes the do not call list, I kind of relate it to the game of whack-a-mole. Remember that game where they pop up and you got to hit them down? It's a do not call list. It's a literal list made by the federal government. So if a scammer gets on the list, what are they going to do? They're going to change their number. It's not foolproof. Anybody can slip through. And if, like I said, if you have an established relationship with a business, they can still slip through. So it's not foolproof. You're still going to get calls. And most importantly, anytime that you establish a relationship with someone and sign up and give them your contact information, you are allowing them to call you no matter what blocks you have on your phone. And a good example of that, have you ever walked through a fair, a festival, the mall, and they're giving away a tractor or something like that, and you sign up to win it?
Yeah.
Okay. The fine print on the back of those signups, and whether you do it in person or online, it always says, we reserve the right to contact you to give you further offers, deals. And so what you did right there is, you're probably not going to win that tractor, but I promise they're going to call to try to get you to buy a trip, or you've won a discount for something. Either way, they're going to try to get you to buy some other good that they're selling.
Now that I didn't know. That was useful information there. So, and I see so many people doing that. It's like, if only you saw what's on the back.
Yeah, and here's the thing, you might win the tractor, and I get that. I've done it myself. And it's all fun and games until you're getting calls at 8 p.m. on a Sunday to win a vacation to Hocking Hills, Ohio.
I can tell you from experience, I used my first job when I lived in Parkersburg. I worked for a telemarketer company. And at first, it was just like normal, like charity calls, stuff like that. But then they moved me to night calls, like people from Philadelphia, and you would get a bunch of these angry people like, do you know what time it is?
And a lot of times with our office, it could be a legit business, but that still gives you rights as a consumer to call us and figure out what your rights are about them calling at unwanted hours. And there's ways that we can actually teach you to get them to stop calling. You just have to understand as a consumer your rights and ways to get around it. If you don't recognize the number, don't answer the call. Yeah, that's always a good practice.
Yeah, and most phones now have, especially cell phones, they can detect if it's a scam or not.
Yes.
And one thing I've noticed too is that I've had a couple scam calls this week and they leave messages.
Yeah.
That's kind of weird.
Unfortunately, sometimes they're pretty gutsy. They'll leave a voicemail. They'll really take that extra step. They're not afraid. They're going to do it. I explain it like this. A scammer's job is not to get up and go to work and be a productive member of our society. A scammer's job is to sit at home all day and research and figure out. They're smart, they're tactful, this is their job and the way they make a lot of money. And so they're gonna sit and they're gonna do everything they can to steal your information. The only thing you can do is protect it and be